10 years in the making, the Air Jordan 1 Alpha finally gets a performance review. So for those of you guys that did not catch the original video on these guys right here, this is the Air Jordan 1 Alpha. It's basically an updated version of the Air Jordan 1, but it's not something that's come out recently. There was a lot of confusion in the comment section for whatever reason. These originally came out 10 years ago, 2009. When I first started on YouTube, I actually did a brief kind of like compilation review of a bunch of shoes. The black and red version of these were in there. I ended up not liking how those fit and all that stuff, so I never ended up doing a performance review. Fast forward 10 years later and here we are. So the Air Jordan 1 traction pattern, one of the, if not the best traction pattern in my opinion of all time. Second best is Kobe 9, just saying. But what they've done here is basically updated the original pattern, and the updates featured on these guys basically just kind of include herringbone, where there would be kind of empty or dead space between each of these spirally lines. Now, my only complaint about this is that the herringbone is a little bit tightly spaced, and it also makes the in-between spiral areas, or whatever it is you want to call them, but it makes these areas again a little bit compact, so all of this can collect a lot of dust if you happen to play on a super dusty floor. Otherwise though, this stuff was amazing. I have literally no complaints on every floor that I've taken them on. I've taken them on dingy high school gyms, 24-hour fitness gyms, which are disgusting, as well as nicely maintained high school gyms, and I always get the same kind of grip out of them, which is awesome. Again, it's not as good as the original Air Jordan 1 traction in my opinion. I think that's due to a couple of things. The first thing is the additional, features that they put in here. It's a little tight now, so when there is dust or debris on the floor, it's going to get caught up in there. That's something that the original Air Jordan 1 just did not have. And then the second thing is that the tooling for the original Air Jordan 1, especially in the forefoot, is super thin. Like, you'd be able to like push it inside and like feel your foot underneath and all that stuff, because it's really, really thin in there. So you have very little material, a lot of just real good grip and contact on the floor in the original model. Again, that's the only real difference between the two. Now, as far as outdoor use is concerned, I just probably wouldn't do it. For one, the shoe's 10 years old, so I'm surprised that they even held up as it is. But on top of that, if you happen to toe drag, this midsole right here is not rubber, it is foam, and this area right here will just get completely destroyed and chewed up, which happened a lot on the originals. There was actually two versions of these, technically three. One of them was this guy right here. The second one was a low top version of these. And then the third one was the Air Jordan 1 Alpha Outdoor. And I actually had a pair of those back in the day as well. They were just kind of a more rugged version. Didn't give you anything extra as far as XDR, but the material overlays were a little bit stronger. And then they had a little bit of a different design panel and a ankle strap for some reason and all that stuff. Because I mean, you need straps when you're outdoors, I guess. But otherwise, the traction on these things is awesome. Now, my favorite feature of the shoe right here is the cushion update. So not only do we have bottom loaded full length Zoom Air, something that you can kind of see peeking through that little window, that yellowed window, but they've also replaced the rubber cup sole with a Phylon midsole. This is also my least favorite attribute because the way that they redesigned it, it looks really weird. It adds some height to the shoe. They've carved out that midsection right there for some compression, which is great for performance, not really great for visuals if you're looking at something that you would like to look more like the Air Jordan 1 instead of an updated version or a different version, I guess, a tinkered version, if you will. Huh? Funny? No? Did you get it?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. But I will say performance is the most important thing here, and they're comfortable, man. Like, playing in a pair of Air Jordan 1s, which I have with the rubber cup sole, I mean, it's awesome. Like, the upper's awesome. It still, can play and all that stuff. Still great lockdown, great fit. The tooling on the bottom, the outsole, again, best traction of all time. The midsole, the cushion absolutely sucks. They're very clunky, all that stuff. This guy right here doesn't have that problem. They're a lot lighter. They have a lot more forgiving attributes in the heel. So if you happen to heel strike, it's gonna ease you into the forefoot. It's not gonna feel like you're just like clunking down on solid rubber, which is what you were doing in the originals. And again, like I was saying earlier, the forefoot of the originals, it's practically like you're on the floor. These guys, they added some height there, so you're not having that issue. Now, because the Zoom Air is bottom loaded, you cannot really feel it, which is a bummer. I would love to have it top loaded, or at least like some additional zoom units in the top section of the shoe directly underfoot, especially when you're comparing it to something brand new on the market today, like the KD12s with that new version of Zoom that kind of replaces a Strobel board. The feeling of that type of cushion, if it were in this shoe, would be amazing, but it's not. Again, it's on the bottom, so you don't really feel it. You do get initial impact protection, which is why they do bottom load whatever it is that they happen to be putting inside the shoe. But again, most of the cushion that you are feeling is just Phylon. Once it breaks in, it feels good. Doesn't feel great, it just feels good. But it sure as hell feels way better than rubber, I'll give you that. Now the materials are something that I have like a love-hate relationship with. I always have, and I probably always will. Back when these originally released, 2009, 2010, and then 2011, that was like the peak, in my opinion, of fused footwear, especially from Nike. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, fused footwear is TPU, basically that's plastic, and they would heat weld it to where it would reduce not just the cost of manufacturing, but it will also reduce a lot of the steps or processing, which in turn reduces cost quite a bit, because you don't have all these hands stitching things together. Instead, you have a machine, and you put all of the panels together, and then you press it together, and boom, your upper's done, which is what knit has then replaced. This is why we have knitted footwear. It's not to make things light, even though it does do that. It's so that we cut out a huge chunk of the cost of manufacturing footwear. A machine is doing all of the work, and then a person then just makes the upper complete and puts it to the tooling. So it's like you're cutting out a lot of processing of, you know, sewing on what, 10, 15 panels of materials. So the good thing about this type of material is that it doesn't show a ton of wear and tear. A TPU or a fuse is great for that. This particular version they made to mimic leather as best as possible. So the white sections are pretty soft. I would say that this is more of just a synthetic leather, even though it has no real properties of leather or synthetic leather. It just happens to feel like synthetic leather. And then all of the overlay areas are where you can see where it's heat welded. So no stitch lines, anything like that. It's kind of glued and then heat pressed to the upper. It's all along here. The swoosh is like that, all that stuff. They do have some stitching for durability and just to kind of give you that iconic look that the Air Jordan 1 originally had. But that's pretty much all that that's for. Now the great thing about this is that it does not show wear and tear too greatly. So, you know, creases are just, they're there, but they're not like super visible, especially when your foot's in the shoe. It does have some, you know, scuffs and stuff like that, but you're not having any, you know, removal of the top colored layer or the PU coat of the leather. So while you do have some scuffing, which is typical if you play basketball, this is not a big deal, but you don't have any ripping or anything like that. So the material's fairly strong and fairly durable. It's not anything crazy. It doesn't feel bad on foot. I've played in worse fused shoes before, like that really do feel like plastic. These don't, especially after you break them in. They do at first, but again, the more that you wear them, they feel better. That white material underneath, or whatever color it happens to be on, whatever colorway you have, it just feels better over time. I will say though that fuse is supposed to not stretch, and there's not a lot of fuse on here, although the red panels are the fuse sections. And like I was saying, that white panel that's supposed to mimic leather, it does get warped the more that you play in them. So it's not very noticeable in this shoe, the left side, but my right foot is my dominant foot. It's not gonna be very visible just from me showing you, but it's something that I notice when I'm wearing them. But it's like my foot and the whole shoe is kind of like leaning over this way, because again, that's my dominant foot. That's where a lot of my pressure is. If I do a step back or if I'm running and curling around a screen, I'm typically planting a lot of pressure on this one foot while I'm moving around in that motion. It's one of those weird things where the upper being like this, I think that it would have been better either all fuse or all leather instead of like kind of a mixture between the two, but it is what it is. It's not like these are new shoes anyways. I don't know if the brand has any plans on updating something like this. It would be amazing if they would. Let them know, by the way, if that's something that you want, because we need to vote with our voice, with our dollar as consumers. Because I don't know if Jordan Brand really thinks that something like this, a Pro Air Jordan 1, if you will, is worth their time or worthy of their efforts. Because these did not sell very well back in the day, but I think they would right now. Now, like I was saying in the beginning of the video, the fit is the thing that made me not really complete the performance review from 10 years ago. I got my true size back then, and I just felt like they were a little roomy. There was a lot of dead space in the toe. This time around, I went down half a size. I thought that they were really, really snug at first, especially lengthwise, but that volume that I don't like around my toe, that like too much space above my foot, between the material and my foot, was not there, so that was eliminated. And then once I broke them in, they just felt fine, and I was even able to wear a brace with these guys because I messed up a ligament in my foot, so the brace kind of helps put some pressure on that while it's weakened. Now, as far as lockdown is concerned, with that half a size down, I feel like they fit really well. Again, there's still that warping on the one side. That shoe is doing the heavy lifting, if you will, while I'm in motion. Other than that, though, I think it's great. I think that a stronger, nicer material would do better. So if it was a nicer material like leather, or if it was a nicer fuse, like some of their newer fuses that they use today are much better than this stuff from 10 years ago. Again, I don't think that they're gonna be doing anything like this. So this is all just one sneaker fan that just loves performance and loves the Air Jordan 1, just kind of revisiting the shoe. A lot of these might not even be wearable today because again, it's 10 years old. It's like one of those cross your fingers and hope that the glue is still good. Mine just happened to be, so this is just for you and I, basically. And then again, let the brand know in the comment section if this is something that you actually would like to see revisited, because that's how, you know, people like us get things done. Now, one of my favorite things about the fit area is right here in the collar. Not only is the collar nice and quilted, it's a nice new material, especially in comparison to the original Air Jordan 1, but they've also added a little bit more padding and those little dog bone pillows that kind of cup your Achilles right there. So those things just add for additional comfort. The shoe is cut down a little bit from being a high top to more of a mid, and it kind of is sculpted around the ankle a little bit better. So you're not getting any poking or jabbing in your Achilles. You're still getting all of the drawing into the heel from the lacing system in these top two areas. So to me, I think that this shoe, as a redesigned Air Jordan 1, did it nearly perfectly. I mean, it's incredible. I just think that this is such a slept on concept from the brand itself that I wish that they would give it a little bit more thought, because they were they were on the money, man. Like, and we're talking about in an era today, 2019, where they're pro-troing things, at least on the Nike basketball side. You might want to revisit the concept. It's not that far-fetched. The support is just kind of whatever. It's mediocre, if you will. It's kind of like run-of-the-mill, right in the average section. If you get them to fit you right, they support you fairly well. The heel counter is in there. It's internal. It's not the strongest one I've ever felt, but it gets the job done. And then the tooling, they really did mimic the Air Jordan 1, so it's very in line with the shoe. It's not wide and over-exaggerated or anything like that, but the base is nice and flat, so there's stability on that end. And then there's no torsional plate that I know of, but I've been told numerous times by many people over at Nike within the design departments that when the tooling is flat, there is no need for a torsional plate or a shank plate or a torsional bar. I don't know the reason for it. I never had asked like for them to elaborate. I wish I would have. That's what I've always been told, so that's what these have. They doesn't have one, but I didn't notice any like over flexing or anything like that. And that takes care of it for these guys right here. In my opinion, this is just my favorite shoe to play in right now. If I wasn't playing in, say, the Kobe Pro Tro 1, I'd be playing in these things, which I am. So I really love these things. I think that they're fantastic. I think that they give you a little bit of everything. They give you new flavor, new tech, old school looks, great features. I mean, this traction, you just can't beat it. You know what I mean? Like, unless they were to put the identical traction of the original Air Jordan 1 on there really is no beating this. And I think that this whole concept is super slept on. There's nothing cooler to me as a Jordan fan than looking down and it literally looking like you're wearing a pair of Air Jordan 1s on the court, let alone in a classic colorway like this. But you guys let us know what you think about these down below in the comment section. If you played in them 10 years ago, maybe you still play in them now, sound off below and let us know your thoughts on these guys. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks for all the support. If you need any more information, click the link in the description box below. It'll head you over to WearTesters.com where you can find their price, their weight, and their scores. So until next time, guys, have a good one.